Hello friends! Today we have a very special edition of our show where we break down our interview with Mr. Stephen Nixon, the founder and creator of the Talking Parents application. That's right, for those of you who are going through a divorce, as well as the divorce practitioners who may also tune into the show, we have the man that created Talking Parents joining us as a guest, so please stay tuned. Welcome to a special edition of the Divorce Broadcast. My name is Manny Segarra, coming to you from Miami, Florida. All right, so as I mentioned in the intro, we had a great opportunity to have Mr. Stephen Nixon on the show, along with Miss Irech Colon Morales, who is an associate attorney here at Segarra & Associates PA, to discuss a variety of topics. And I think it was such an interesting and engaging conversation, so I want to take an opportunity to break down some of the topics that we discussed. The first part of the video, we asked both Stephen and Irech to give us a little bit of background about each of them. I found it really interesting that Stephen is an attorney and how his trial and litigation experience has inextricably intertwined itself with the Talking Parents application. You're going to hear a little bit about Irech as well.
I was actually born in Ohio on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. My dad was in the Air Force. He retired and moved down here to Northwest Florida when I was little, and I grew up here, right here in Okaloosa County. I went to college at Florida State to go to law school, and then ended up coming back here to Okaloosa County. That wasn't really originally my plan, but that was 2008 that I became a lawyer, and the economy was having a bit of a downturn, and it was safe to come back here where I was comfortable, and I was waiting tables at Ruby Tuesdays while I was waiting to get my bar results before I then went to work for the state attorney's office here in Okaloosa County.
Very cool. So the hero origin story is true. You are an attorney, sir.
I am. I worked at the state attorney's office for just a little while, and then I left there and started a law firm with my brother, and I was focusing on criminal defense while my brother was focusing on family law, which is how I wanted it. I didn't have any desire to really do family law. That wasn't something that appealed to me.
Yes, well, it's still a little bit difficult to do. What do you think, Rich? It's still a little bit difficult to deal with, huh?
Tad torturous, just a tad.
All right, and Rich, really quick, why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Yes. So I fully practice family law. It's interesting because I did start out in Miami with the firm down there, and I have now locating in Orlando now for about a year now, I think, to be able to expand the clientele over here. So all things family, divorce, child custody, paternity, child support, domestic violence cases, so the whole shebang.
During the next part of our interview with Stephen, we ask him to give us a little bit of an explanation regarding the purpose of the Talking Parents app.
The Talking Parents app, as it was initially envisioned and as it remains today, is a way for co-parents, any people who have a child together but are not together in a relationship, to communicate with each other and to keep a perfect record of all of those communications. It started out that was just written messages, and over time we've added a lot of other features, including calling and some other stuff that we'll talk about here. But all of the communications, all the interactions through our app between parents are kept on perfect records.
During the next portion of the interview with Stephen, I wanted to kind of get to why the Talking Parents application started. And I love his explanation of what I like to call the hero origin story. And it's interesting to me that the old adage proved true, which is necessity is the mother of all inventions. And then you're going to get some great insight from Irech as to how cases can be more complicated when the parties are not using the Talking Parents app, and how it's easier to get a lot of these messages in when using the Talking Parents app. So check out this clip.
As I said, I left the state attorney's office and started the law practice with my brother, and he was doing family law and I was doing criminal law. And he ended up leaving our practice, but as a result, I inherited our family law practice. But I didn't want to really focus on family law, frankly. And I found immediately going to court on these family law cases that every single case involved poor communication between parents. And then the way that affected me as a lawyer was that people would come in and your clients would tell you there's all these text messages, there's these emails, we had these Facebook communications, these MySpace messages back in the mid 2000s. And you would tell them, all right, well, bring those things in, let me see them. And so your client would leave, come back a few weeks later, and they would have attempted to print that stuff. And what you ended up with was a really just big, messy stack of stuff that didn't really make any sense. It wasn't a coherent record of any sort. They often couldn't find the stuff that they were sure existed. They would say, oh, I know there's another email out there, but I can't remember what email address it was that I used for that. Or there's these other text messages, but I got a new phone and I can't get them. I'll just go into AT&T and get all my text messages. And then on one particular day, we had a case that was a modification between these two parents who have been going back and forth in court a fair bit. This was not a major deal. It was about like extracurricular activities for the kid. And we had many hours set aside for this hearing. And a big part of it was the communications between the parents, what they had agreed to or not agreed to. And so we did.
You're telling me the parties did not agree. It's
You
shocking.
won't believe this, but not only did they not agree, but they didn't agree on who didn't agree on what.
Right.
And so we get in there and you do what you do as a lawyer. You've got these documents and you're showing them to the other party, and the other party gets them and they take out their glasses and they look at it. And then they say, well, hold on. I did a reply to this. Do you have the reply? And we think, well, I don't know. There's no reply. And they said, well, I've got a reply. And then they would get out their big stack of stuff and they would dig through it. And after 5-6 minutes just sitting there in silence, they'd say, well, I can't find it, but I'm sure a reply. But I can't find it. I'll find it later. And what we ended up doing was just burning through this whole block of time for the hearing. As you guys know, judges hate it when you've been waiting for months to get into a hearing and you just burned all your time just trying to establish this record of communication, not even getting to the argument. And at the end of the hearing, the judge dismissed our clients and looked at myself and the other lawyer and said, guys, somebody has got to figure out a way for these people to talk to each other, where everything that they say is kept on some kind of record so that we don't do this again. And it was that day that I went back to my office and I looked. I thought, well, there must be a service out there that the parents can sign up for, and then everything they say is kept on perfect record. And there just wasn't. There wasn't anything that fit what I needed as a lawyer. I wanted a simple service where they could sign up, talk to each other, keep one record of everything they were saying to each other, that they couldn't delete anything, they couldn't edit anything, they couldn't change anything. And rather than having two competing copies, you would just have the one record for use in court, the way that I would want it to be as a lawyer to use as evidence in a hearing.
So that was the birth date of Talking Parents. It's interesting because you had a court hearing. So as a practitioner, Iraj, can you relate with the moment before the birth of Talking Parents? When Stephen says that they were in court and they all had a jumble of binders and papers and MySpace, imagine MySpace, Facebook. Have you encountered that before when people aren't using an application such as Talking Parents?
Oh, without a doubt. Not sure about MySpace. Maybe a little past my time, not sure. But even now today, just comparing and contrasting between, court hearings where we have to introduce emails instead of emails, and it takes so much longer because you have to go through the full authentication process and there's objections you have to deal with on the other side because it's true. Some people say, yes, this is right. The other person will say, no, it's not right. But with Talking Parents, it's a great way to have basically exactly how he said it, one record where there's also already a custodian of records affidavit certifying that the records are true and accurate and they haven't been messed with. So it is much easier. And the court system is also taking it as something that is very prominent. It's like, oh, a Talking Parents record? It's coming in, so it's much more acceptable.
During the next clip of our interview with Stephen, we asked him how the Talking Parents application came to life, and it is so interesting to see how the technology wave of the late 2000s, early 2010s helped fuel the use of applications and Talking Parents. In addition to this, Iraj asked Stephen a question of what influenced in creating the Talking Parents application. Check it out.
This would have been back in 2009, so I had good timing because this was a time when everybody was online, but smartphone use wasn't ubiquitous yet. I think I had a BlackBerry at the time. I may not have even had a BlackBerry yet.
So I had a flip phone. Remember the little flip phones that they had?
And so what I needed was a website and web app. So I got together with some guys I actually gone to high school with, who I knew were web designers. One of them had built the website for my law firm. And he said, oh, you remember this other guy, and he's a developer now. He could build the web app part. We could work together and build this thing. And so I sat down with my legal pad and I started sketching out how I wanted it to work and, coming up with the designs and meeting with those guys. And they put together the first version of Talking Parents. And it was very exciting to get that thing in my head into existence. And pretty soon there we started getting, people signing up and using it.
I guess I would ask, in looking throughout your journey, what would you say was like the biggest influence in getting the application running? What really got it that people were like, wow, this is amazing, and really gained popularity? Like, what caused that?
It's hard to say. I think that the fact of the matter is that when it was first built, I didn't have a lot of resources to go out and promote it. And so really it was just literally seeing it being used, seeing people signing up for it, and then hearing from court systems and hearing from people saying, I went to court in some place I've never heard of. And yet the court there is telling people to use Talking Parents, and somebody is reaching out from another state that I've never been to and just saying that their lawyer wants them to use Talking Parents. And to see how it's getting picked up because it's such a good idea, because it is so useful. As far as the satisfaction that you get from seeing something, it's one thing to spend a lot of money on an advertising campaign and people go to your website. That's cool, and you got to do that. It's very satisfying to see something just growing organically because people are using it and they're telling their friends, they're telling their family. If they're professionals, they're telling their clients. See it growing like that, because that won't happen if it isn't a good idea and if it doesn't work.
Up next, we ask Stephen to give us a breakdown of all of the features of Talking Parents to date, and he does an incredible job of explaining all the different features that are available on Talking Parents. I think the application is amazing. What's great about it is that you can also use the features on both the iPhone and the Androids. I'm old school. I have one of those Androids. My entire family and friends make fun of me for having that Android, but I also love the calling and audio transcription functions. You will see Irech also comment on the reimbursement functions. Let's view Stephen's breakdown of the different features of Talking Parents. Here we go.
Well, initially, Talking Parents was just messaging, just written messages, and then they could get a copy of that record anytime. Over time, we have since expanded. We've added a lot of new features. We have device-specific apps for iPhone and for Android. You can also still access your account through the website, just like you always could at talkingparents.com. But over the years, we've added a lot of great new features. We've added in the ability to have a shared calendar to put events on the calendar. If you need a copy of your calendar record, all those changes and all those edits and all those deletions are on that record. We've added in the ability for parents to pay each other through the app. And then the big one is the ability for parents to actually call each other through the app. And so they can use landlines actually if they need to. Both parents have to stipulate and agree ahead of time that they understand that the calls are going to be recorded before they're able to make or receive calls. And then they can place calls to each other through the app as well. So those calls can be voice calls, telephone calls, but we also have video calls these days as well. The calls themselves get recorded and those become their own individual digital files, but the calls are also automatically transcribed and the user can get a copy of their call record. And the call record has all the calls themselves, what kind of call it was, who initiated the call, how long the call lasted, all that stuff you would expect. The parents also have the option of including the transcripts of the calls themselves on that record. And then, of course, the way that we do everything, and then, what really sets us apart from our competition at this point is that I wanted everything that we do to be logged perfectly on these records and that all of this stuff be as user-friendly as possible in court. Our hope is that having that record is going to encourage them to be better co-parents. If there is an issue, let's say that they're not doing that, or maybe they are, but they still just can't agree on something. Well, then you may end up back in court. And when you do, I want your Talking Parents record to be readily available and in the best possible format for use in court by lawyers. I hope that's going to save you a lot of money to your lawyer, and then it saves courts a lot of time too. So we have both of those things that we're trying to accomplish as a company and as a business there to help improve the relationships and then to streamline litigation that does occur.
That is a wonderful explanation of the different areas that it touches upon. Irech, have you seen the reimbursement portion of it where they submit the request for reimbursements?
Yeah, I really enjoy that because a lot of times I'll have conversations with my client preparing for hearings about reimbursements and what's been paid and what's been owed. And a lot of times it's interesting because they'll print out, the whole sheet, be like, no, this is when I requested, this is the date I requested it, this is when he looked at it, this is the cost, this is when I submitted the payment. So it's very complete in the sense that there's no questions that I'm asking myself as I'm reading the record, right? It's all clear when I look at the document online or in the application when you download it.
That was an impressive list of features. I invite all of you to check out the Talking Parents website so that you can see the list of features in case you missed anything. When we had a chance to ask Stephen what the best feature was, his answer didn't surprise me. What was interesting though was that you can see during his answer the trial lawyer and the litigator coming through. So check this out. Very interesting stuff.
Well, our core messaging feature is still there, and it's still free to sign up for an account, and it's still free to access your account through a web browser. One of the great things about Talking Parents is that even though we have these paid accounts, for premium features and our device-specific apps and things, if you miss a payment, or if you're not using it as much, or if you have a need to not pay for it, you don't lose access to your account. You don't lose access to your records. You just get a free account, but you can still access on your phone or on your computer, anywhere else through the website. And you can still talk to each other. You can still keep those records. And I'm very proud of the fact that we have maintained that sort of core functionality that I envisioned and that we originally built. And even as we get bigger and we have a lot of new cool stuff, we keep true to that original goal and to that original goal of providing that messaging service for free through the web.
That's awesome.
And then as far as our current features that are best, I think our calling is really our killer feature right now. The ability to make these calls to the parent, to have those calls be secure, to have them be recorded, to be able to get them transcribed, to be able to have that on the record, designed for use in court, with the individual call files themselves separate in case you need to use them as evidence as well. So I think that particular feature, and then just the way that we log everything on these records.
Following up on all of this, we asked Stephen to comment on the growth of Talking Parents. There has been impressive growth with that company since 2009, when it was simply an idea in Stephen's head and some notes on a legal pad, to the first iteration of the application in 2010. This is a company that has shown significant growth and has crossed even into international borders. Good for him. Here's the breakdown of what Stephen had to say about the company's growth.
It's been very exciting for me, on a personal level, to take something from being an idea that I have and notes on a legal pad to being an actual thing. And then it has grown significantly since. More than a decade ago, I got together with some guys here in Fort Walton Beach who had their own large custom software and technology company. And we merged together. We created a new company called Monitor Communications, of which Talking Parents is the only current product. And we've been growing, extensively since then. We've introduced the device-specific apps for iPhone and for Android. We've introduced many different iterations of the website. All these new features and functions and cool new stuff that Talking Parents does has all come through this new setup. At this point, we've got a large building. We've got a ton of people who work on it. I think our team's 60, 70 people at this point. We've got teams of people doing development work. We've got designers. We've got marketing people. We've got a huge user support team to make sure that everything is working right, that we're helping everybody figure out any questions that they have. And it's exciting for me to be able to, step back from practicing law, which is always a nice break, and then to see something grow like this and to have, hundreds of thousands of users at this point, mostly in the U.S., but also around the world, getting significant growth internationally. We obviously have probably U.S. citizens who are traveling all over the world, accessing their accounts all the time in lots of different countries. But we also have courts in Australia and in the UK and in Canada and some other countries ordering people to use Talking Parents as well, getting utilized for more and more types of cases, going beyond just the bad communication, traditional civil cases, to being used for cases where people communicate pretty well, being used for criminal cases, being used for non-traditional uses even. We've seen it in adoption. And as far as we're concerned, we don't care how you use it. We encourage lawyers, parents, courts, be creative. You've got a tool here, and it's going to be best used by different people in different situations a little bit differently. And we actually have a segment on our website, resources for legal professionals, that has a lot of information about these different use cases, different ways to use the service. And we've even got some example motions and orders on there that have got all kinds of stuff in them that you can use to inspire you to create these orders for yourself.
And we're going to go ahead and put a link below in this video to where we can access some of those forms, because That's another thing. Rich, did you know? I had no idea that they offered these forms on that.
I had no idea. This is news to me. That's so great because a lot of times when I'm drafting agreed, even between with other counsel where we all agree, that we're going to use the app, we're always, hey, where are we putting in here? What's going to be the actual terms of how it's going to be used, what's in it. So that's really cool. I got to check that out myself.
And there's no right or wrong way to do it. Everybody's have their own style for drafting motions and agreements and orders and things. So also, for any lawyers who may be watching this, and for you guys specifically, if you come up with some great language to utilize our service that you put in there, let us know. We'd love to put it on the site. We can give you credit for it if you want. If you don't, we can just stick it on there anyway. Because the more information that we have, the more examples, great. We love that. That way we can spread that out to other lawyers who might be in the same situation if I had the same kind of use case.
One of my favorite parts of the interview with Stephen was when we asked him if he had received any feedback. He breaks down some of the feedback that he got from the judges, but what's even better is when he broke down a client testimonial involving someone who was hesitant or reticent to engage in the Talking Parents application and later thought it was a great thing and might have actually saved him. Also, Irech and I provide a little bit of feedback, and what's wonderful is that it is clear that Stephen is open to receiving feedback from all different types of people, whether or not they're divorce professionals or clients. It is a great part of the video. Check it out.
I've had judges in the past, we used to spiral bind our records. And I had a judge say, the spiral bind records are cool, but it's a real hassle to copy them, and sometimes I just need the one page. So we changed that, We've had feedback from courts, about different cases, just casually telling me, hey, I used it for this kind of case. I mentioned the probate case. That was a judge actually in Tallahassee many years ago who mentioned that to me, that he had used it for a probate matter. We're hearing judges say that it is saving them time, that it does make their hearings a little bit easier. That's really the feedback that we get from courts, is how much it improves their lives and their dockets by simply keeping their dockets a little bit smaller and making the hearings go a little bit faster. I think one that stands out that I recall, I had a guy who was ordered to use Talking Parents. I think he was a police officer up in Chicago, and he was not happy about it. He felt that it was going to be used against him. He felt that his co-parent was setting him up, and that he was always destined to lose in family court. Everybody was just lining up to take advantage of this guy and make his life worse. And he made it known to us, to me personally, even at the time, that he was not happy. And, I remember reaching out to him because this was early on, and I felt strongly about what we were doing. And I talked to the guy and explained to him, what Talking Parents was, how it worked, why it existed, what I had built it for, what I hoped it would accomplish. And that calmed him down. That let him feel a little bit more comfortable. All right, well, it may not be, as bad as I thought that it was, but he was still very unhappy. Same guy, significant time later, I don't know if it was 6 months or a year later, might have even been more, reached back out, and it was the total opposite. It was, you won't believe how this has helped me. You won't believe, the difference that this has made in my life. Because instead of it being used against me, what it actually ended up doing was documenting what my co-parent was doing to me. And I ended up with the evidence that I needed. And I was able to go back to court and change my custody situation. I was able to protect myself. I was able to go on the offensive and not feel like I was getting, the runaround in court because of your service, because of these records. And it's been wonderful. It's changed my life. And that to me was, especially early on, was sort of like this ultimate proof to me that this could be a company, this could be a business that sure I can be successful with, that can grow and can make a lot of money, but that it can also really truly help people and really truly improve their lives. That was a moment that I look back to as being like a very satisfying thing to experience and to see that it really is doing what I wanted it to do.
What a wonderful story. I think that's amazing. Add Irech and I to 2 of your fans because you've helped in a lot of our cases as well. Your vision is one of a former trial attorney. So you look at it from the prism of how am I going to get this stuff into evidence? And I know, Irech, what are your thoughts about how it's set up? I think it's amazing the way that it's right there for you, for the practitioner, to have it ready to go where it can be authenticated in an easier way, depending obviously on what the court decides.
Yes, it's like putting a little nice bow. It's all wrapped up, easy for us to just go ahead and try and introduce, because obviously there's legal procedures behind all of that a lot of times clients have a hard time understanding. So sometimes I can just cut through it and be like, it's okay, they gave it to us.
You know, and over the years, when we get feedback from legal professionals, from courts, from lawyers, anywhere around the world, you know, we provide one product, our records, or, you know, the files that you can get pursuant to them, like a phone call. But if we hear from a court and they say, hey, you know, we really wish that you had this language in the affidavit, we love that kind of feedback. I would say if you're an attorney, if you're a legal professional and you're watching this and you think, well, yeah, this is great, but it would be better in my court if it had this too. Tell us. That's how we improve it.
Where can the legal professionals either contact you or send their feedback to you? I know that your team is very responsive, so where can they send their feedback to?
The best way to get in touch with us, the best way, first off, is to visit our website, talkingparents.com. We have a page on there, resources for legal professionals. That's where you're going to find frequently asked questions of a legal nature. That's where you're going to find example motions and orders. You're going to find more information about the different use cases that you can be utilizing it for. And then there's a contact form on that page as well. So if you want some brochures, other information from us, or if you have a question to reach out to us, that's the best way to do it. Our team will get it. And if it's something about the service itself and how it works that they can answer, they'll get you that information. If it's more of a legally pertinent question, they'll put you in touch with me. I can get in touch with lawyers. Lawyers can contact me if they've got a hearing coming up and they're stressed out, they've got a record or a piece of evidence they're worried about, they just want to talk it through. I can reach out to them and we can go over that.
For those of you who regularly tune into the channel, you already know that we are big proponents and advocates for the prevention of domestic violence. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to discuss with Stephen how the Talking Parents application can be utilized as a tool in these type of difficult cases, which involve either domestic violence injunction cases or criminal cases. You will see that based upon Stephen's answer, the Talking Parents application is a game changer. Let's see what he had to say.
Yeah, it's definitely made a huge difference, especially when there's kids involved between the two parties that either can't communicate because of the stay away order, both, you know, in the civil case as well as the criminal case. And judges easily allow for the modification of those stay away orders in order to be able to implement communications through Talking Parents. And they essentially order that it won't be a violation of that, you know? So it's been something that's very common and very helpful because it also protects both sides, right? Because when there's different allegations going, you know, one way or the other, this again, you know, keeps everybody on their side of the woods and keeps it separate.
That's a big benefit of our service as well, is that parents don't need to know each other's actual contact information to communicate through the service.
Yeah.
We use their information. We use their names and just the first name of their oldest child in common and that child's birthday to match them together, and then put limits and say you're only going to discuss the kids, and maybe you're only going to discuss them once a week. Even, you know, you get an update through Talking Parents. Maybe the court says, all right, you can update through there, but you can't say anything in response. You know, depending on the nature of the case and the circumstances, the court can get, again, creative with that kind of an order. That way people can still have some communication about the kids, even though they're going through this kind of a domestic violence situation. And the court can know that there's the safety issue of not knowing each other's actual contact information. And if there is any issue, there's the record. We know what they've been saying to each other. If somebody violates that order, you don't have to dig through all this stuff and try to pull this stuff together to show that they're in violation. It's just right there.
And finally, before we concluded our conversation with Stephen, I thought it may be a great idea to ask the founder and creator of Talking Parents if he had a little bit of advice for parents or for people or for co-parents who are going through the divorce process with children. Let's hear what he had to say, because I thought it was great advice.
You know, I'm not one for a lot of personal advice. You know, I think that, you know, a lot of the things that are good in my life have been the result more of luck than me being especially knowledgeable about anything. But I would say that if you're a parent and you're going through a difficult situation like this, you know, obviously you want to focus on what's best for the kids and do that. If I was going to give any advice, I would say don't forget about yourself. You know, if you're not taking care of yourself and doing what you need to do for yourself and you're not happy and healthy, you know, your kids are going to feed off that. Don't be so focused on doing everything right for the kids that you forget to take care of yourself too. I think on a personal level, if I had to give some advice, that'd probably be it. I need to take my own advice. And then also, you know, on a practical level though, you know, just keep a good record of everything. You know, you may think that something's not going to be an issue in the future, but keeping those records, keeping all that stuff in one place where it's easy to find can help prevent a lot of headaches down the road. And obviously that is something that Talking Parents would be useful because that's what we do. but that is definitely something I would recommend.
And that is a wrap for our interview with the creator and founder of the Talking Parents application, Mr. Stephen Nixon. Thank you so much for coming onto the channel. Stephen, we are very grateful and appreciative that you came on and shared all the information that you did on Talking Parents. We're also very excited that members of his team will be showing up on the channel in the very near future regarding the features and functionality of the Talking Parents application, as well as some of the resources that not a lot of people may know about. So stay tuned for all of that. If you want to take a look at the Talking Parents application or check it out, we will provide a link at the bottom of this video to Talking Parents. If you know anybody that might find this information useful and may want to reach out to us, have them look us up at www.segarralawfirm.com. We have offices in Miami and Orlando, Florida. Se habla español. Please do us a favor and like this video, subscribe to the Divorce Broadcast channel, and we will see all of you soon. Thank you.